Hi, I'm Danny Ramos, and welcome to this week's edition of Hispanic Speak Out TV, brought to you every week on Bright House Cable TV, 9:30 p.m. on Tuesdays, and we've been on the air for 9 years. I'm here with my co-host, Jose Miranda, and today we're talking with Ron Blocker, who's the superintendent of Orange County Schools, who's going to give us some insight into the school system, how it works, and what we can expect going forward. Before we get into that, I just want to show you guys the Hispanic Achievers license plate. This license plate was passed into law about 8 months ago by the state legislature. It's the first Hispanic license plate in the United States. And this license plate is available at 360 DMV offices throughout the state of Florida. That's your tax collector plate office. And you can have this plate on your car. 90% of all the revenues from the plate go to scholarship grants for needy students, needy minority students, and 10% goes to administrative cost. That's also in the law, and by law, all the money has to be distributed to scholarship grants, and it's monitored by the state of Florida. So if you're registering your car and you're Hispanic and you want to do a little Hispanic pride and celebrate the 500-year anniversary of Hispanics settling in Florida, which was in 1513 by Juan Ponce de Leon, get your Hispanic plate and celebrate the 500-year anniversary. We also have a project that I want to show you. This is the Consumer Lawyers Directory, which can be found in 175 7-Eleven stores. It's free of charge. If you're hiring a lawyer, get this book. It's absolutely free. It tells you how to hire a lawyer. It tells you what you should ask a lawyer in all the various cases, such as injury, divorce, bankruptcy. It's very, very informative. So before you hire a lawyer, take a look at this. And for those of you who prefer Spanish, it's bilingual. And again, it's in all the 7-Elevens, and it's also in Winn-Dix, 36 Winn-Dixie supermarkets, and it's free of charge. So before you hire a lawyer, get this book. It's extremely, extremely informative, and it's free. Jose, you can start off with the first one. I know you have a long-standing relationship with Ron. I mean, you used to interview him on your radio show.
We did. We used to have him on quite frequently, and Ron has been an outstanding supervisor and a leader out there for the Board of Education, as well as for this great town that we live in. And I want to thank you for all the great years.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
If people don't know of his reputation, you either hate him or you like him. Those are the two middle spots of it.
Hey, that sounds like me and you.
That's right.
So it's a threesome here.
So it fits in just in. One of the most outstanding issues that Don, I call him.
You used to call me Don, yeah.
Is the budget. When when the states were all going belly up and people were running around, what are we going to do? The world's going to fall down. And this president came out and said, well, I'm going to give out monies for the schools. I'm going to give out money here. We're going to go to job-ready issues. There have been other venues here in the state who took the money and ran right down till they squeezed the piggy bank dry and then broke the bank. This man had the courage to say, I'll take the money, but I'm going to be frugal with it. I'm not going to lose anybody their jobs, but I'm going to show you how it is that we can get a district and a people and a town together and make it work. And I got to tell you, I'm so proud of you, man.
Thank you.
You made it work.
Money will do that.
You made it work. So
thank you.
You're here at the end of the rainbow, man. You're getting ready to step out the door. What do you do for your next act, man?
Well, as you can see, I'm too young to just stop doing anything. I keep telling myself, you're young, you're young, you're young. But there's always other things to do. But I get a chance to, over 35 years of a professional career, and especially the last 12 years as a superintendent, you start putting a lot of things aside and say, I'm going to get around to it because I have these other important things to do, and I'm going to start paying some attention to some of those things that I put aside. I've been blessed in that the good Lord has answered my prayers as far as what's good for kids, and that we continue to do some good things for children. I'm sure that I'm going to continue in some capacity providing some type of assistance for children, because that's just how I'm wired. But I don't think I'll be a superintendent again.
You don't want to double dip like most people in this town?
Sometimes it's not worth
District
it.
attorney included?
Sometimes it's not turning, but not worth it. But I believe that there's time to kind of smell some other roses and flowers and all, family, develop myself personally, and maybe become a consultant in some capacity to help other districts or organizations work with children.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are. Who's Ron Blocker? What legacy has he left?
A reporter once asked me about what changes did I make or what legacy am I leaving, and I kind of like to my response has always been, well, that's pretty much for other people to determine, because going around saying I did this and I did that, it really isn't true. We work together as a system and as a community. When you talk about it takes a village, it really does. And this community, after not passing a tax increase in 30 years, said children are worth it, and we need new and modern buildings. And in 2002, they gave us this half-penny sales tax, and we've had over 85 projects between that and some other funding sources we put together there, where we've had quite a facelift in this community since I've been on board. The other part, too, is that the community said at one point when Orange County government was rechartering itself, this community was very strong about not overcrowding schools. And so I'd like to think that Central Florida basically wants to kind of distinguish itself as a community that cares about children. And I was, blessed enough to be in a leadership role with this kind of attitude.
Well, you got teachers working with you. You got the unions working with you.
Yeah.
So how much are you paying them under the books to get that kind of cooperation?
Well, this interesting thing about that is in my prior life, I actually oversaw the bargaining process, and we have a different kind of we call it collaborative bargaining. The traditional collective bargaining setup is that you look across the table at each other, and you stare at each other, and then you see what you can horse trade or browbeat each other into giving. And I would prefer to say, here's a target. Here's where we both want to be. Now let's talk about how we get there. And so one of the things we went to back when I was a deputy superintendent was what we call collaborative bargaining, interest-based bargaining, which is basically you still have your 2 points of view, but you come together and you start researching how you get to where you want to be, and then you negotiate that. And that's less bloody. But on the other hand, you get a lot more. I think you get more from it. And so when you look at some other districts and the contentious atmosphere goes on, we always settle our contract sometime during the summer. So when the teachers came back to work, all they had to do was they were ready to vote on the contract. So that was a morale boost. You weren't dragging it out to December, calling each other names. You got there in August, and the union would say, here's what we negotiated, the school board would approve it, and then the teachers, all they had to do was vote on it. And if they voted to support it, they knew when the raises would come, and we gave them a calendar. So everything kind of worked out. The problem sometimes you have when you're arguing all the time is you start losing sight of what's important, and you kind of have to keep that child's picture out there to say this is important. The other thing that I enjoyed about it was that the unions pretty much you had the kind of relationship where they would come up with ideas. They said, "Have you looked at this?" And the ideas didn't always have to come from management, and we just had to be secure enough in ourselves to say, "Let's look at it." And so we had a pretty good relationship.
Did the bilingual program suffer? I know we have massive amounts of kids coming into Orlando,
right,
who's Spanish language dominant. Okay, there's no question about that. When I was a kid,
group.
I didn't start speaking English until I went into school.
Okay.
Because we were in an isolated community in an isolated apartment.
Yeah.
And it was a vertical town. So you can't go out and play in the street. So all the exposure of the language was in the household.
Right.
We have a lot of that going on here in a different kind of way. People are migrating into Central Florida from South America, Central America, a huge number of Mexicans coming in.
Right.
And while Puerto Ricans are bilingual, the other groups are not.
Right.
How does the school system handle that when you have these massive amounts of kids coming in Orange County and they don't speak English?
Well, one of the first things I discovered my first year as superintendent was there was no perfect way of doing this. I actually had my staff do a research of all the national models out there, and no one really had the magic bullet. It's pretty much how we approach it is we try to tailor the program to the needs of the children. So some kids will get here in kindergarten, and it'll be easier to work with them in a bilingual situation as they get, because your mind is more nimble. Other children are getting off the plane at the age of 15 and attacking English for the first time. And so you have to approach that differently. But you try to first work with them within their native language as much as possible and with some universal content and approaches. But you try to, as quickly as possible, move them into the English-speaking piece so that they can be competitive in the testing that's taking place and the expectations within that community. You're absolutely on target. The Hispanic population is the largest demographic within the subgroups, but we actually have over about approximately 200 nationalities represented in our schools and 160 or so different languages and dialects. So it's a challenge, and one would think, well, all you have to do is go out and hire a Spanish-speaking teacher for that class, but I could go to in one of our elementary schools and a bilingual class may have 14 different languages going on at the same time. Some of our schools like to hang the flags up around the cafeteria, and on a typical school may have 40 or 50 different flags from different countries. So we are truly an international community, and I think there's some really good things come out of that, some really neat approaches. For instance, when you talked about the license tag at the, you don't know this because you had no way of knowing it, but I kind of got a charge out of knowing that this is the only community in the whole country that has a license tag plate approved. And I'm thinking there, New Mexico, Arizona, California, you got to be kidding me.
It's amazing that California didn't see this and do it because you know the size of the population there is huge.
But I think because of somehow we're so international in our thinking that I'm not going to call it no big deal, but this was obviously something that was made sense and easy to do in the state of Florida, and I'm just blown away by that. I just think that's the neatest thing.
We got a lot of support from the state legislature. They wanted it. A few people didn't want it, you know, and that's always an uphill battle, like you know that. But for various reasons. But it was an uphill battle, and it's still an uphill battle because you know we are the only license plate that was put on a quota system. So we have to sell a certain number of plates before December 31st, or we are threatened to be eliminated. You know, so that's my job. Well, my job is to go out there. And
but sometimes you get a convergence and all the things, and the stars align. For instance, Dennis Freites is working with we're working with him because he's trying to get the 500th anniversary. And so he wants to make sure that the schools have a piece of that. And so I can see something like this kind of like being a nice byproduct of everybody talking about that, and then turn around and says, I think I'll buy a license plate. You know, so you never know how.
Well, it all goes back to you. It goes back to the kids. All the money goes back to the kids. I mean, we do 10,000 plates. That's a whole lot of money that's going back. It's 10,000 times 25. You know, so that's a lot of money going back to the schools, to needy students for school.
Did that idea originate here in Central Florida, though? Yeah.
You know what happened? I was driving up the street, and I was down on 441. I went up to the back of a car, and we were thinking of ways to help the community. And there was a specialty plate there, and you know, it just bing, you know, and it was there.
Well,
but it took 3 years, I'll tell you that.
Well, guess what? You know that education license plate with the little red. That started here with 2 parents here in Orange County many moons ago. So this is just like a.
Let me ask you something. Is there anything that we can do together to get the word out to the Hispanic parents from the school system on this? Like maybe an essay? Maybe we can do an essay and do a $500 grant to the best essay about Hispanic culture.
Well, as I said, we're working with that project on the founding of Puerto Rico, so that easily can be something that we call it a teachable moment. Okay. in public education, when something is out there, like the first space shuttle going up, that's a teachable moment, and I think that's something that can happen. And when you and we're actually working with our curriculum department, as long as it meets the Florida standards, what we call the Sunshine State standards, as long as it meets that, because ultimately that translates into test scores.
Exactly.
And then fourth grade. The fourth grade curriculum by law requires you study Florida, the state of Florida, and sometimes connecting the dots, like you said, with Ponce de
This is all about the history of Florida.
So it all works together. That's why I say sometimes the stars align.
Yeah. Let's get back to you though.
Okay.
We're talking more about the plate and meat.
We're talking good stuff though.
Yeah. So where did you originate from?
You can't say Africa.
I can't say Africa. Okay. I'll move the time for you. I'm a native of Miami.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I've been in Florida all my life.
Well, like I was telling you off camera, the two hot seats in Central Florida, two hottest seats in Central Florida, Superintendent of Orange County Schools and the police, the police chief, Jerry Demings, got the hottest chair. Those are the two hottest chairs because people are always going after you, and it's a yin-yang situation. What was the most critical moment in the last 4 years on an educational decision, on a budget decision, on a parent? What was that one thing that was a turning point for you?
Well, believe it or not, on any given year, something's going to pop up. It's just that kind of job, as you alluded to. But when I first took the job, I get one of the first letters I got from the Commissioner of Education was that Orange County had the lowest graduation rate in the state of Florida, had 49%.
You're kidding. I didn't know that.
And now we're 80%. We've always trended up with moving from that. That was shocking news, and he said, this can't be, and we aren't going to stand for it. So that was critical because that clearly showed that we were, if we weren't doing our jobs right, we were creating an underclass that would lead to other problems, social problems like crime and unemployment. I clearly was not happy with the state of the facilities. I felt that they were bordering, because they were so old and we never got enough money from the state to stay current on maintenance, that on any given year they could be unsafe. You had complaints of indoor air quality. You had the normal Florida humidity. The air conditioners were always going out. Leaky roofs every rainstorm. And so clearly it was not our best moment. And people were relocating here to the tune of 6,000 to 7,000.
Yeah, you go down any highway and you see the new developments going up everywhere.
And so, and they were judging the quality of the school district on what the facilities looked like, or if they had all of those portables that we don't call portables, we call them learning cottages. It's all about packaging and marketing, right? But so clearly we needed to get some money, and there was some doubt whether we could, because 3 years before, the community resoundingly said no to a tax increase for schools, but it wasn't just schools. We were paired with the city and the county. They all had projects too. And I just said that if we didn't go back out, then we were denying children and teachers a safe environment. So we got our act together. We did a tremendous amount of data gathering, and I took it to the school board and said, look, this is what the picture looks like, and it doesn't look better. It's not going to get any better moving down the road. And
was there resistance from them as far as money goes?
School board wanted it to happen, but they had gotten a message from the community that it wasn't going to happen.
Why?
And because the tax had failed 3 years before, so they felt, and everybody with an opinion would say, you guys aren't going to get it because you're not a good school system. And my thing was, well, you needed to have a safe environment and modern learning facilities. The board resoundingly, unanimously said, yeah, let's go forward, but we have to convince the community, and that's kind of what happened. And so that was a critical moment. And in 2002, the community majority said, this is important. We had made our case. We brought the case before them, and they said, and we assured them that we would be good stewards of the money, and they trusted us enough to support it. And since then, we've been moving forward. Another critical point was when we became we were able to pay our teachers more than all the districts. you move the money around, but what the goal was when talking to my finance officer was, wouldn't it be great if every level of the pay scale we were able to beat all of our neighboring districts? And that way, when applicants came to Florida to apply for a teaching job, they would look at us and
say,
say,
the cream of it.
Yeah, and we're not going to go any further because obviously you guys pay more. And the complaints we were getting was that at the first couple of pay levels, we paid better, but then you go to another county at level 4 and 5, somebody else paid better, and someone else would say, I got out of college 10 years ago, and my roommate is 2 counties over, and at the 10-year level, they get paid more than I do. So we decided to go from coast to coast, from Hillsborough to Volusia. We wanted to beat hands down every district at every level. And you sat down and I had a genius of a brilliant finance officer, and he's the kind of guy that closes the door and lock it, and then when he comes out for air, he's got a plan. And maybe 2 weeks, but that's okay. It's worth waiting. And he did, and we took it to the union, and they were excited about if we were able to pull this off, and so we did, and we were able to show them how we were going to do it. And how it happened is the class size amendment gave us that opportunity, because we had a handshake agreement long before I was superintendent with the union that if you don't require this in the contract, we would try to always keep class sizes low. So we did. They weren't great. They weren't perfect.
What is the class size that is the best class size to be able to teach and communicate with a group?
That's an interesting question, because people assume that, you get a class of 15 kids and you should be able to get twice as much progress than you did when they were 30. And my position is, if you use the same instructional strategies with 15 that you use with 30, then you ain't going to get any better results, because at 30 you were warehousing. And so, so if you're going to change class size, you need to change your instructional approach also. And that's what makes it work. So right now, the law requires 20, at one level, 22 at another grade, and 24 at the upper grades, and for the core courses. In reality, it's what you do with those. And so at the kindergarten level, when they say it should be no more than 20, we also have a second adult in the room, because we think that teacher needs those kids. It's kind of like organized mayhem, and they need somebody always on top of things and making sure that learning is maximized. There are some classes you can get away with 35, 40 kids in it, because if you have a physics class of very bright students, they're never going to be off task. They're never going to be staring out the window. They're never going to be taking extra bathroom breaks, because they all want to be doctors and engineers, so they're going to learn that physics in high school, the advanced placement. So it just depends on the population. So I tend to stay away from that ideal class size. I'd look at, when I walk into a classroom, what are you doing with what you have, and then that'll determine.
Did the stimulus that you gave teachers by giving them a higher income, I know that would attract better teachers from the outside.
Right.
Did that stimulate the teachers already on the inside to do a better job?
Well, the stimulus money came later, when President Obama got into office, but this was prior to him getting in office. We actually took the class size. The state law gave us a loophole. It said, if we're going to put this extra money out here to make sure that you're all able to meet class size. And they gave us an artificial ceiling, and they said, if you have this level, you don't have to use it for class size. You can use it for anything you want. Well, we were already there. So we said, we'll just move that money into raises. And what we did was we then put everybody at a higher level. What that did was, it was a morale boost to our teachers, and they knew then that we really cared about them. The other thing that it did, and this is a byproduct of it, and I can, you talk about legacy, I can never take credit for it, but I really get a kick out of it, and that is, 2 years of that, other districts started noticing that they weren't getting the teachers they wanted, that they need, and their teachers were saying, how is Orange able to pay more and you aren't? So they all started creeping up.
You started to use your model.
So I'm thinking, we not only helped Orange County, we actually helped Central Florida.
That's right.
That's a neat thing. But that's neither here nor there, because now a few of them have caught up with us on certain, at certain levels, and we're going to have to rethink how we can beat them down again.
Are the minorities still the primary dropouts in the community, blacks and Hispanics?
Yes, I would say that you talk about an achievement.
I mean across the board. I'm not just talking about Orange County.
No. Achievement gap. That's one of the critical indicators, and nationwide. You have an issue, and it's if you had to even disaggregate the data even more, you would need to focus in on the males, because the males are the ones that are really not, where there's a real gap. And that's a critical piece that I think everybody needs to really stay on top of, because in reality, today's dropout is tomorrow's social problem. So imagine what that does 10 years down the road. And you may have a higher prison population in Black and Hispanic males.
Right.
So what do we do to reverse that? So we really need to work very hard on not only keeping them in school, but giving them skills that will make them successful.
Why? We only have a few minutes left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I got two questions for you. On the dropouts,
Right.
okay? When you have primarily Hispanic and Black Afro-American dropouts, how do you prevent that from happening, and how does it originate? In other words, what's the cause of that? Okay, and I want you to say it because you're the man who knows.
Okay.
And how do you prevent it?
The cause is not simple, but I'm going to point you in the right neighborhood. I don't know if we'll hit the right house, but we'll be in the right neighborhood.
Okay.
Two things affect that achievement gap. One, the pre-K level. What happens when you enter kindergarten? Students from affluent communities tend to come better prepared in kindergarten because their parents are stimulating them with music lessons and ballet and gymnastics and getting them enrolled in all the right pre-primary kinds of things. And students from economically distressed areas may not have those stimulants. Then when you get to kindergarten, we're going to make sure that they advance at least a year. But imagine the student who's very prepared is going to advance a year. The student who comes in less prepared is going to advance a year. You still have that gap. So the only way to close that gap is to find ways of accelerating the learning for those who the have-nots. And that's not a simple thing. The other factor that contributes to dropouts, and the research is pretty clear on this, is that if you're retained once, there's about a good 92 to 94% chance you'll be a dropout by high school. If you're retained twice, it's about a 98% chance. So when you think about the children that failed third grade reading, and there's a state-imposed requirement that if you fail the FCAT in third grade in reading, you are retained another year, then you've already, that's the group you start watching.
And do you work with that group? Do you focus on?
We provide remedial classes and other things, but you also are faced with, if you're an oversized child, you may end up growing up to be a bully too, and then when you're a bully, you get in trouble. So it all just comes together. How do you stop it? The research also is clear that regardless of your socioeconomic status, your ethnicity, your nationality, if your parent is involved in your education, you will do better than those parents who are not. So even if you are affluent, if you have an absentee parent, you're not going to do as well as the affluent child whose parent is involved. So I would say get parents involved as early as possible.
We only have 2 minutes, so a minute for each one of these.
Okay.
Number one, what is the primary method to get a parent involved? A minute.
I'll focus it on in a bilingual home. We cannot use the traditional methods of just automatically communicating with the home. You kind of have to outreach a little bit more because some parents don't feel comfortable because they've always had this fear of school.
Is the school system doing that? Do they reach out to them? Yeah?
Yes, we're trying.
Now here's another question I got for you. The last question.
Okay.
Is there a digital divide in the minority community, Black and Hispanic?
Yes, sir. And I won't say Black and Hispanic, I would say socioeconomic. Where if the minority population is concentrated more in the lower socioeconomic group, there is a digital divide.
And what I read one time that digital divide is around 30%.
Okay.
Do you think it's that high?
I would be reluctant to attach a figure to it, but I would say this. It's significant enough that it can affect what goes forward in the future because we're doing so many things now with technology. I mean, when you go to college now, you go to college with a laptop. That's like that's like a notebook.
Yeah. All right, thanks so much,
Okay,
Ryan.
sure.
I have 100 more questions to ask you.
I can tell.
You'd be good, man.
Let this guy ask all your questions.
He seemed like he was a kid, man. I got another one.
I'm thirsty. This is Danny Ramos on Hispanic Speak Out TV, and we'll be here next week, Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. every single week on Bright House Cable. We want to thank Bright House Cable for their support of our show for the past 8 years, covering Hispanic issues in the Central Florida community. Don't forget your Hispanic license plate. Okay, if your birthday's coming up and you're going to register, get a Hispanic license plate. The proceeds go to help the community. This is Danny Ramos, Jose Miranda, and Ron, thank you so much for answering all those questions.
Okay.
I thought it was great. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.